And we're
Hi,
live.
everyone. Yes.
Yes,
Hi, everyone. We're just going to give it a few minutes and let everyone filter in, and then we will kick things off.
amazing. Let us know
Awesome.
where you're dialing in from as well. I think we have a very international group today.
Yeah, let us know. Joe, are you dialing in from New York or Paris? I meant to ask.
Paris. I'm back. I'm back in Paris. I'm back in France right now, where
There you
it's
go.
very hot. And as you know, France has not discovered AC yet, so it's a piece of technology that we have yet to figure out. So it's been something going back. How about you? Are you in New York right now?
I'm in New York. Yeah, yeah. I was gonna make a joke. AI before AC.
Wow, wow. We dropped AI so fast in this conversation. It happened so
I
fast.
know. I know. It wasn't even on the slide, but I still had to say it.
So we have
All right. I'm
um,
seeing some folks in from North Carolina. We've got California, Brazil, the UK. Amazing. Well, it's great to have you all with us today. Just a few quick housekeeping rules before we kick off our presentation. I know some folks are still filtering in. We are going to be recording this session, so you'll get that replay delivered to your email following the call. I see some of you are finding our chat and Q&A function to drop in where you're coming from. So please continue to use that function throughout the conversation today. This is a moderated conversation, but we'll be monitoring the chat for QI and comments as they come in. And I'll be passing those to Joe and Oren following the live discussion. So I'm going to pass it over for some introductions. I'm Colleen Matthews from Rally. I'll be our moderator today. Joe, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
yeah. So everyone, Joe Widewski. I live in between Paris and New York, so hence the French accent you'll have to endure today. I've been in research my whole life before starting Maze, so I'm a researcher by trade. And Maze is a full end-to-end research platform that's trying to unlock a system of learning in organizations, something we're going to discuss today. Basically, helping organizations getting more leverage out of research and making insights something that everyone can both engage in and consume. And so that's what we've been trying to build. And I met Oren very early in that journey as well, and I'm excited to have this chat with him today. Oren, I'll pass the mic to you.
Thank you. Yes, likewise. Great to finally be doing this. So I'm Oren, co-founder, CEO of Rally. We were founded about 4.5 years ago now to what we are calling today to say goodbye to manual recruitment. The most painful part of the research process that ends up being a bottleneck for a lot of teams, but is still the most important part of what we believe that the research process, because it dictates everything down funnel, who you're going to be speaking to, the insights you're generating, and the decisions that you'll be making. So we've been very focused on this one singular goal of making it extremely easy for teams to connect with their users. And yeah, Joe and I first met probably around 4 years ago. We used to go on little walks in Brooklyn near the river, grab a coffee, and chat about the future of research. And I'm sure we'll be doing the same right now, just in front of a little bit of a bigger crowd.
Exactly. You're just going to replay of the romantic walks we had around the river in Brooklyn.
Exactly.
Amazing. And on that note, so today we have a few themes that we'll be discussing just based on what we're seeing in the landscape today. And these findings are additionally grounded in Maze's 2026 Future of User Research report. So definitely check that out following the conversation today. So kicking things off, we'll first be discussing how research is shifting within organizations today. So within the report, we found 41% say that research informs both product and larger strategic decisions. An additional 22% found that research is essential to every level of business and strategy and operation, up from 8% last year. So handing it over to you two, what does the future research organization actually look like to you? How is that team's mandate around learning expanding to enable that company-wide learning as a whole? I'm going to take myself off.
All right.
We're starting with a big question. I'm happy to get happy to see that 8% increase as well. I'm happy to get started. It's such an interesting moment, I think, in the world in general, and in the world of research as well. I wrote a post a couple of years ago when ChatGPT started coming out, and then when all of those players started coming out as well, where there was a big question about now that AI can automate a lot of things or can accelerate a lot of things, what does it mean for the role of researchers, the role of research? And at the time, a lot of people focused, I think, on the tactics of research. They thought, oh, it can accelerate this part of the process or this part of the process. But when you zoom out, I think what I tried to capture at the time was there's a bigger thing that's happening when you actually can develop and build things at the speed that you can build, is that it changes the equation of what organization optimize for. If an organization is ultimately the decisions you make times the execution that you make against it, and if the execution piece of that equation shrinks, all of a sudden the cost of decision becomes much, much, much higher. And that's a great opportunity for research, where research moves from an insurance policy within the product team to something that's actually like the unique competitive advantage that you have. And so at Maze, that's been part of our reflection. It's been, okay, in a world where anyone can build anything, all of a sudden what you build becomes what matters. And so I think it's an exciting moment for research. And the data that we see today is kind of like the representation of that, is that organizations now are realizing the importance of research and it's growing. That's great. The problem, I think, in organization today is that realization has not come with an increase in headcount. It has not come in an increase in spend. And so all the researchers that are present in this call today, I'm sure you're seeing the thing play out, where it's everyone understands now that research is critical, but you're asked to do more with the same in most cases, or more with less in some of the cases as well. And so that begs a bigger question about, okay, so what's my role as a researcher in that world? What do I do then? And I think we're seeing two big trends happening. The first one is there's a convergence of role between user research and market research. And that's something we're seeing happen more and more across accounts, where user research and market research were historically very split part of the brain of an organization. The methods are similar. One is more quality focused, one is more quantity focused, one is internal user focused, one is market focused. And yet they were all trying to answer the same question, which is, what do our existing or potential customers want? We're seeing a convergence of those things, meaning that now the researcher mandate has expanded from my practice focus on product, or my practice focus on marketing, to my practice focuses on the broader like insights that I need to help the organization make decisions. And there was recently, I don't know if you saw it, Oren, Figma hired for a role that they call scaled insights, which is someone that sits both across market research and user research. And I think we're going to see an emergence of more of those roles that are not as like clear-cutted as like user research or market research. The second thing that comes with that expanded mandate is that people will have to find ways to find leverage, either through technology or through people. And I think it's going to be through both. They will have to figure out how they can pass down more of the decisions that are being made day to day to the people, and leverage systems and tools to be able to make those decisions also more guardrailed. And so there's an interesting opportunity right now in technology where we can scale expertise at scale to allow organization to more easily democratize, but in a way that actually doesn't imply just training a bunch of designers, but instead like giving them the tools and the guardrails to be able to operate. That's sort of what we've seen on our side of the equation. I don't know, Oren, what have you seen on your end?
Yeah, yeah, very, very similar stories, but maybe I can take it from a slightly different angle. That first piece of the blending of roles between the blurring of lines between user research and market research, certainly something we're seeing, and then also seeing a similar dynamic of the blending of roles within product orgs in general. And there's been a lot of talk about this for quite some time, and it's interesting to see. And I'm curious to hear your firsthand experience of what you're actually seeing in real life. But I do think for the very first time, we're starting to get interest in research from engineers, which never happened a couple of years ago. But all of a sudden, to your point, where the speed of building gets faster and faster, and people all across the product org are enabled to ship and to come up with ideas and to solve customer problems, that creates a natural opening and opportunity for user insights and learning throughout that development cycle. So we are seeing an increase in desire to be closer to customers from newer people that that weren't necessarily asking to be that close a couple years ago. So that pressure almost, I think, is what's driving the democratization, which from an incentive standpoint makes sense, because I think a few years ago we were all trying to push for democratization from a different sort of perspective, like everyone should be closer to customers in an ideal world. But the world has changed fast enough where it's now no longer a nice to have. To your point, not like an insurance policy. It's a must-have in order to stand apart, to actually build differentiated products and features. When again, anyone can create anything, or so they say.
Yeah, yeah. We're seeing the exact same thing, and it's interesting because on design Twitter 5 or 6 years ago, I remember all of those conversations about, should designers code and should developers design, and like there's such a big blurring of roles right now happening across the space. Anyways, like, and it's not just like an even product function; it's an everyone function. Like everyone can build, everyone can design now. Like all of those things have happened across the space, and so research is not immune to that trend as well. Like if everyone build and everyone design and everyone. The thing that's scary, I think, as a practitioner, especially as an expert practitioner, is how do you ensure the quality of the decisions that are being made? How do you ensure that those insights are used and leveraged for the right way? And so when we think about democratization, at the time we spearheaded the democratization movement at the time where like democratization was a very bad word in the research world. And at the time, like we built a lot of empathy for the researchers. Like when you talk to them, they were like, well, I want to get more people to do decisions, but I've also spent 10 years building trust and relationship with my stakeholders. And 10 years of good decision can be unbuilt by one bad decision that we let happen. And so it's very scary for us to just like give the rein to someone else and for it to happen. And so I think that's where in organizations that are successful right now in enabling research to happen more organically everywhere, you need to build a more systemic approach to how you put those guardrails and where you make decisions. And I think that the expertise is still very required at different parts of the value chain of research. And that means at the what type of question we're asking. So at the beginning, at the entry point of research, and then at the what decision do we make from this at the output of research. And while AI is great at accelerating the entire journey from there, like the capture of data, the analysis, etc., those two moments remain intrinsically human. And even in those organizations that have managed to scale research, to make research available to engineers and to designers, we're seeing that they're putting in place those guardrails to make sure that the quality of what you do with the output still makes sense. An example, exactly, garbage in, garbage out, Gabriel. And a great example of a conversation I had with an expert researcher recently that I love is we were talking AI moderators. And at Maze, we have an AI moderator. AI moderator is becoming a standard, I think, across the space on like a method for doing research. And what they said was, AI moderators are becoming the biggest bias engine we've seen in our space. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Why? And what he said was, in the past, it used to be that if you're a PM and you run research, you would go to the researcher would run the research for you. And no matter the bias that you have as a PM, the researcher would be the one making the decision. The problem today is that if you get a PM and you give them AI moderator and they have their own bias about what they should be building, and you run an AI moderator against enough people, you will find the 3 clips of the 3 people that will say the thing that you want. And so ultimately, there's another layer of guardrail that you need to put in place. That's that now with that massive amount of data, that massive corpus of data we have access to, that's qualitative, that allows you to build empathy. You need to be very thorough about what you do with the data that you collect to not just validate the bias that you're bringing in the process, but actually to leverage it in a way that challenges the decision you're trying to make. And so that's also where the researcher has a unique role to play, is ensuring that the rest of the organization doesn't use the tools to just reinforce biases that they have in the process.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's such an important point. We're seeing a lot of parallels across all these different roles where, for example, with engineers, when anyone can whip up something themselves on Claude Code, you still need an engineer to make sure that whatever is being pushed out is reliable, is up to the standards, is high quality, especially in an enterprise environment. And that construct still very much holds true with research and how we're starting to view the researcher role in this new era. One framing of it is they're almost an arbiter of quality. They're the ones that set the standards for what good looks like when it comes to research, the process around it, the guardrails that you were speaking to, and that allows everyone to level up and raises the floor, so to speak, so that the biggest pitfalls, the biggest biases can be circumvented. There was a great example of this from one of our customers, a woman named Michelle at Ramp. She's definitely on the leading edge of building and thinking in this space. She actually referred to herself as a UXR engineer, which is a trademark new title. But one of the things she is building, or she built recently, is she's building a practice where there's very small group of researchers, just 3 researchers supporting over 100 people on the product team that are actively and continuously trying to connect with customers. And one of the things that she created was, as soon as an interview with a PM and a customer is complete, she runs it through an agent that basically scores the interview and gives recommendations and feedback based on all the different best practices that she's put in place and that she's instrumented behind the scenes. So each time a PM runs an interview, they get immediate feedback on what they did well, what to improve on next time, and slowly but surely, she's raising the bar one individual interview and touch point at a time. And I think that's really what it takes in order to drive this type of cultural transformation that we've been pushing for so many years. It happens at the individual by individual level, because everyone needs to learn themselves what good looks like. It's not inherently obvious, especially if you're not doing research every day, which most of these people aren't.
Yeah, completely agree. I think we touched on a lot of topics. Maybe, Colin, we can. I think we're going to double click on a lot of those moving forward. So let's move to maybe the next topic.
Yes, that was amazing. Thank you both. All right, so moving on to the next bit. So as demand outpaces, maybe what we've seen in the past, this second side is really around that demand end of the story. So in the report, we were seeing around 66% of teams are actually reporting an increase of demand for research, which is up a staggering 55% from last year. So let's talk a little bit about how teams are meeting those coworkers and colleagues where they're at and really integrating research into where those teams are already working.
Oren, do you want to get started on this one?
Yeah, sure. So it's about how our researchers meeting teams where they are. So I guess that Michelle at Ramp example was a good one, and we are seeing that a lot. That in order for designers, PMs, engineers, marketers, whoever it might be, to properly run research, we are seeing a lot of systems that are created by the research and research ops function, and that's really the only path to what we believe is like continuous high quality addition to this system. If everyone is doing, we call in marketing, it's called random acts of marketing. In the research world, random acts of research. If it's the Wild West where anyone is just freely contacting customers, running interviews in their own tools, not storing anything in one central place, not keeping track of learnings, decisions made, or anything, it doesn't build on itself. And the organization just gets more and more fragmented. All the painful things that we all know come up again and again, which is research, all the wasteful research that's being repeated. There's very little compounding. And that's yeah, what we see happen a lot of the times within organizations where there isn't an architect of the system, there isn't a person who's dedicating a lot of thought and energy into what are the happy paths that we want people on our team to go down, and how do we reduce friction along the way in order to generate very high quality research across the board.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think what we're seeing in teams that have managed to create a more scalable approach to research and a more embedded approach to research as well, which is ultimately like, what do you want research to do? You want research to live at the level of the decision where they're being made, meaning like you want to enable designers to make the design decision that they're making. You want the PMs to make the PM decisions. I think there's two levels of arbitrage that those teams need to make. There's one level about what is the cost of the decisions I'm willing to let go of? Meaning, we're talking about research in a very abstract way, but ultimately research is a set of decisions that you're applying methods against. And so not all decisions have the same impact, right? The same way that I will probably not let anyone run the strategic decision of my business, I might let people do usability on their own. I might let people do more of the evaluative type work on their own, like the copy test. Like all of those are places where the cost of being wrong is often a two-way door that has an easy fix to it, or an easier fix to it. And so, first of all, you need to get comfortable with the level of decision and leeway you want to give around those decisions. The second thing we're seeing, it's more of a philosophical shift. It's researchers, for most of us, we come from a practice where we are celebrated for the purity of our practice. We're celebrated for the how great are we at saying it depends across a set of decisions by showing the evidence and the data and like building a corpus against it. I think the most successful researchers we're seeing right now are doing an arbitrage between the purity of the practice versus the scalability of the practice. It's a bit uncomfortable, but again, because you're not applying those principles against all decisions, but only against the decision that you're comfortable getting wrong or getting sometimes wrong, then ultimately you also need to be comfortable building systems that will sometimes yield things that are incorrect. And in reality, I mean, even us as researchers have, like, it has happened that we've been incorrect about certain things, no matter the corpus of data. And so I think across those two things, the way that we've seen embedding research be successful has really been across A, understanding which decision you want to let go of, and B, a philosophical shift around I'm willing to trade some of the purity against some of the scalability. I'm willing to trade some of the oversight for letting people actually run their own research. And it's scary, but ultimately, if we go back to the numbers, if the demand for research increase, and if the spend for research doesn't, and if the investment don't, and the practices are being merged, you can either fight this or you make the arbitrage. But fighting this is generally not the right approach to make things successful. And so for all of you here today, like that's kind of like, I think the way we're seeing people think about their practice. It's I need to figure out where I want to be have more purity, more scalability, and I need to figure out which decisions I want to be more pure versus scalable about.
Yeah. And I think the one other component that comes to mind as you're talking about this is ensuring that a culture is being created where it's okay when the research is wrong, that it's okay when decisions are made and we have to go and change those down the line. Because what I've also seen go wrong, now that the pendulum has swung so many times over the last few years on democratization, good versus bad, what I've also seen happen is poor or low quality research gets done. People make decisions based off of that, and then research as a practice is blamed as a result of that. Like, oh, we did research, but that word research is obviously very loaded and can mean different things to different people. And so it's, I think equally as important when trying to drive this type of enablement to have that idea in the culture that it's okay to make mistakes and to be wrong sometimes, and it's all part of getting better as a team and as an organization and getting to the eventual truth. But it's not research's fault in general as a practice when things don't go perfectly right.
Yeah. And to that, one of the things I say most times when I talk to organization and what are the culture where research can thrive? Like ultimately, what are the cultures that enable research to thrive? And it's actually the culture that celebrate being wrong early, right? And I think less often I see people like seeing wrong research. More often I see people with the right research that will invalidate the commitment to the roadmap that you've made, that will be dismissed, right? Because EPD organizations are incentivized for speed, and ultimately saying this is the wrong thing and we should not build it is not something that's celebrated. What's celebrated is I delivered the roadmap that I was asked to deliver, and I checked all the checkboxes, no matter if it provides ultimate value to the end user. And so I think, to your point, there's a broader like celebration of being wrong and figuring out where to be wrong. And I think giving that cultural values also to the people that are going to be running research autonomously, meaning all of a sudden you're a designer, you're a PM, you're an engineer. Research is not a tool that you use to validate. It's a tool that you use to challenge yourself and challenge the bias that you're bringing to a process. And when you're wrong, it's actually a celebration because you didn't deliver something that didn't provide value for a user. It's a big mindset shift to the like move fast and break things mentality that we've been building toward for the past 20 years, where the celebration was a delivery celebration. And so all of a sudden it's a shift from, are we celebrating output or are we celebrating outcome? And then ultimately, if you're celebrating outcome, then you should be celebrating the fact that you were wrong because now you're focusing on the right outcome. And so that's also the biggest mindset shift that we're seeing in successful orgs.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious. Have you seen like any examples of seeing that shift come to life within your customers or teams that you're familiar with?
We have, and often it starts. So the way we describe it is that often it starts with one champion. Like it's not a dramatic shift. It's not like all of a sudden the company wakes up and everyone celebrates being wrong. I think it starts with a simple, like a single decision that needed to be made, where a researcher was able to insert themselves early in the decision process, meaning not as a validation layer, but actually when the decision was being shaped. And the researcher was seen as someone that was shaping the decision, not someone that was validating the decision. So saying, hey, this feels important. Let me get you some data about that. Let me get you some insights about that. And then they came back and they showed like, look, like some of the instincts were right, some of the instincts were wrong. This is the direction we should go. When you do that and when you insert yourself in the shaping of decision, what happens is that you're someone who's being called to those meetings. Instead of the one that's trying to get in the meeting, you're the one that like, today at Maze, for example, there's no meeting where we don't have our researcher that's coming in and like, here are all our biases, and he leaves and like, okay, here are all your biases. Here's what I'm going to test and try out. So it starts with that, and if you have that single proof point, it becomes a very powerful artifact that you can leverage to start like building a case on why we should be making decisions differently and what we should celebrate as an org.
Yeah, I love to hear it. And just the last thing there, I think that is very inspiring as a concept because it's something that anyone in this call can go and do starting tomorrow within their own company. And that's, yeah, I know a big part of the role of the researcher. Sometimes you're trying to push a boulder uphill, to say it lightly, but that's an example and a construct that we see work time and time again, that it just takes changing one person's mind and then the flywheel starts to turn.
Exactly.
That's amazing. Thank you. Yeah, I saw some folks in the chat grab onto that idea of being a research engineer or kind of architecting that system of learning for the company. So definitely resonates with the crowd. All right. Our third and final theme, as I'm sure is not a shock to anybody in this day and age, is the topic of AI in research and what we're seeing in 2026 and moving forward. Where is AI really helpful within the process, and where is human judgment and researchers and folks really within their craft still absolutely essential? So the survey found around 82% felt that human judgment is essential for interpreting nuance and emotion. And similarly, 80% found that human judgment was essential for ethical decision making. So kicking things off, so where do you both see AI proving to be genuinely powerful in research versus where would kind of human connection and judgment still really seeing as irreplaceable within the industry today?
Yeah. I can get started if you want, Oren, on this one.
Cool. Yeah.
I think so. There's many ways to answer that question, but I'll start at the base level. I think at the base level, where humans are uniquely good and where we still need a lot of the human input is on what type of decision are we trying to make. So at the input side of things, once the research has been done, what is the decision we're trying to make? What's the decision we're making with the data that we collected? I don't think AI is capable of getting all the business context, understanding the context to the point of making a decision, and I don't think it will ever be. I think it's a state of human thing that understand the strategy of a business and what they're trying to drive, plus experience. And there's a third part that's actually the most important skill of researchers today, which is the visibility of the research and visibility of the decision. Meaning, like, there's a political aspect to the great researchers that know not just like to get to the right decision, but to influence decisions. And I think that's the part that actually, as a skill, becomes a lot more important in an age of AI. And that's where we're seeing like the most successful researchers thrive is they know how to navigate the surfacing of the decision, the influencing of the decision. So I will start there. I don't know on your end, Oren, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I have a ton of thoughts on this topic, and just one interesting kind of side note, but related, that came to mind. So something that you had mentioned earlier as well about AI not being able to replace, what question do we ask, and then how do we make sense of that information and make a decision. That actually maps very much to how we used to talk about democratization a couple of years ago, and which parts of research do you still want a researcher to own versus an non-expert to own. And the analogy that I've heard used is, you want a researcher to be there to help take off the plane and then help land the plane. And it's when you're flying the plane, it can be very much autopilot. It can be on rails, but those trickier parts of the process, you want an expert involved. So it's interesting that the way we used to talk about democratization is now almost being extended into, what are the human parts of research versus the less human parts of research. And I totally agree with those two pieces. And the other thing that I would say, and this connects to how we think about AI internally at Rally and the usage of AI, because obviously today everyone is trying to find as many applications for it as possible, embed it as much into your day-to-day, replace as much as possible. But the core thing that we try and tell everyone in the team is, don't outsource your thinking, and don't try and take kind of the easy way out with AI, because to the garbage in, garbage out point, it's even harder to tell with AI, but that's even more prevalent when you're lazy with it or try and take the easy way out. And I think that can happen with research as well, where we try to outsource the decision making, we try to outsource the judgment, we try to outsource the hard thinking that goes into figuring out what am I truly trying to get at here, and why. And AI is not going to be able to answer those questions for you. So it's, I think, a lot of parallels as well to just day-to-day AI usage.
I'm very surprised. I was expecting you as the CEO of Rally to talk about the participant and the human participant as part of what's important in the world of AI, which I think, and I think there's a broader conversation about like where are humans valuable there versus like what's the take on synthetic testers and on all those trends that we're seeing in the market. I have my take, but I'm curious to hear yours before maybe.
Oh yeah, that's the real answer. Before it was just my musings. The real answer, what we talk about a lot is everyone at companies who are building products, it's still humans behind the products that you use every day. And if humans are building products for humans, we think it's still very important for those humans to talk to the humans that are using the products. So we champion and believe deeply in the human-to-human connection. piece. And why? Because I don't think that the connection and the spark that can come out of a real user interaction can be replaced by AI. So much of the value of research, especially for non-researchers, when you think about PMs or designers, even engineers, so much of the value of the research comes from the things that aren't necessarily explicitly said in an interview, but the feeling that you get from talking to a user, the empathy that's gained, the things that are under the surface that you pick up on based on having that direct human-to-human interaction. And that's what I'm talking about with outsourcing the hard part. Like, it's not easy necessarily sometimes for a PM or an engineer to talk to a user that maybe comes from a very different world than they do, comes from a different background, environment. But the things that you can learn and experience, and that the moments that creates can change your mind entirely on how you view the product that you're working on, the problem that you're trying to solve, who it is. It can come to life in a much deeper way than outsourcing that part of the process to AI, whether it's an AI moderator or a synthetic participant. And don't get me wrong, there's always use cases for those things as well. And I do believe in their ability to fill in gaps. But I still think the most important critical part of research that we can't lose within this era is the direct connection between the people who are building a product and the people who are using it in the end of the day.
Yeah, I love that answer. I think the way we've been thinking about that problem, the humans and the synthetic testers and all of that, there's been two ways that we've been thinking about it. There's one way that what do you use research for ultimately? And I think research, as you said, is to understand humans. But even if you look at it from a more cynical standpoint, if you look at it from like, yes, but why should I still talk to human? I can still ask Claude what they think about this and simulate my participant, and that should be good enough. AI is great at known knowns. AI is great at like treating knowledge as like something that looks backward. Humans are not monolithic entities where you can just simulate every part of what a culture is, because it's, as the definition of culture, it's in movement. And so ultimately, even if you're taking a cynical look at it, in a world where everyone can build anything and the only thing that matters is what you build, what matters is how uniquely do you understand the people you're solving for. And that means actually talking to the humans you're trying to solve for, because that's their lived experience you're trying to solve against. And that AI cannot replace, because ultimately AI only understand the known knowns. They only understand, like, it's a camera looking backward, it's not a camera looking forward. Where I have a more of a hot take than like a belief in a hot take is that ultimately, I don't like the conversation about synthetic testers, because I think we're talking about the technology and we're not talking about the decision. And if you shift the conversation from like, should we or should we not use synthetic testers, to which decisions am I okay to get wrong 20% of the time? And in this case, synthetic testers can be a good input to those decisions, because ultimately, if you experience the real life experience of a designer today, or the real life experience of an engineer today, one of the questions that pops up in their mind every time they are in front of the computer is, which decision am I willing to slow down for today? Meaning, like, I'm doing this design and there's 3 ways that I could be doing this flow. Am I willing to slow down for this when I'm 5 Claude credit away from building this thing and potentially 5 credits away from building an iteration of it? And so ultimately, I think in the real world, there's going to be an arbitrage known by the practitioners everywhere, where they will always have to choose between the cost of this is so low that I don't really have to test it, or if I test it, I'm not willing to slow down for it, and I'm willing to be wrong, meaning synthetic testers can be an answer to it. And so I think we need to reshape and reframe the conversation about synthetic testers, not from a yes or no, like a blanket statement that's a yes or no, but instead as a understanding and empathizing with the lived experience of the designers, the engineers, the people that are making everyday decisions, and giving them again the leeway to potentially unblock themselves for the decisions that are lower value and lower impact, so that they don't have to slow down in a world that asks them to accelerate. And so that's I mean, for me, that's the trade-off. Is I believe in the human value of talking to humans. I don't believe you can build a company successful without talking to humans continuously and constantly, I do believe that synthetic will have a part of the future, whether we want it or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that framing. It makes the conversation much more tangible than debating the merits of the technology. To your point, and yeah, I really like the visual that came to my mind as you were talking was looking at the research industry as this like pie chart of decisions that are made in the day to day. And if you really boil down or drill into what a designer's or engineer's day to day looks like, they're making thousands of decisions, micro decisions on a constant basis, and it's up to the research tooling space to enable as many of those decisions as possible to be as correct as possible. And I think that's where all these different methods come into play, is just filling in the gaps on questions, on decisions that you used to not be able to even come close to figuring out with research.
Colin, I think you're muted right now.
Sorry. All right, great. So with just a few more minutes left, we had one question come in around what are you most excited for in the future of the industry? And then maybe also expanding on what makes you a little curious or cautious as well.
Yeah, I can go quickly, and then you want to round us out, Joe?
Sure.
Wonderful. The thing I'm most excited about the thing I'm most excited about in the industry right now is just the opportunity for people to really redefine themselves and to grow and to learn in this new space. Like, there's clearly so much opportunity to solve new problems that are appearing within all of our day-to-day lives, and those problems that we've spoken about throughout this conversation are not going to be solved by AI. They're going to be solved by humans who are harnessing and leveraging this technology. And so I think it's just an incredibly exciting time in everyone's careers right now to develop these new skills and create opportunity for themselves for the future. Because this isn't going anywhere. This is only going to become more and more prevalent. And the last thing I'll say is that it feels like we're at a point now where people are accepting of this as opposed to fighting it. Whereas a year ago, there was a lot more doom and gloom, a lot more resistance. And today it's more just like, okay, let the wave come over me because it's here.
Yeah. Well, yes. I'll wrap this up on my end. I'm very excited about the elevation of the role of research in general. Like, I think I was a researcher. I started in the field. I think research for a very long time has been put at a very tactical level in organization, answering questions that were very tactical. I think with both the leverage AI gives and that convergence of roles, research has and the importance of decisions in a world where execution is done, there's a real opportunity for research to take a much more strategic role and sit at the table. And that's super, super exciting because it completely elevates the conversation from, like, again, I'm an insurance policy for product. My job is to make sure that we're shipping the right thing, to my job is to drive the company strategy and help them achieve the goals by deciding where we need to go next. What I'm very nervous about, and something I reflect a lot on, is part of why research became what it became is because in the early 2000s, the Facebook and the Amazon of the world came up with the move fast and break things movement, where the best way to learn was just to build a lot of crappy things and then push them to market and learn from those things. The question I have, and I'm trying to answer for myself, is with AI, are we entering into a faster and like a move fast and break things on steroid? Or is this the reckoning moment for research, where for the first time, now that like everyone can build everything, people will have to rethink the fundamentals and how they've been building product and company for the past 20 years. And so my sense is we're going to see both play out, where some companies are just going to double down on, we don't even need to learn anymore. We just need to ship a maximum number of things to increase our surface area of luck. And some companies are going to be a lot more intentional about what they build, where they go next. We, as research company, have a bias in believing that the one that do this will be successful, but that's a lot of what I ponder about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Yeah, I love that. I know we're at time, but I think that's a really interesting thought exercise, and imagine of playing that through a little bit, what the world looks like. But I'm definitely on your side. I think the companies that have the intention, have the thoughtfulness, are building, slowing down to speed up, are going to be the ones that win.
Exactly.
Thank you both so much for the conversation, and thank you all for joining. We'll be in touch with follow-up materials following.
Thank you, everyone. Have a
Thanks,
great
everyone.
rest of your day, evening, wherever you were in the world.
Thanks for tuning in.